Good morning, everybody. My name is Connor Flanagan, and I am the Director of Education at the Southampton History Museum. Today, we are joined again by Jackie Scerbinski for another talk about fashion, this time focusing on a more modern topic than our last few with us. Before we begin today, I want to remind everybody to sign up for our mailing list on our website, southamptonhistory.org. That way you can stay up to date on all of our future programming, which includes on Sunday, February 14th, we have our Valentine's Day hike at Emma Rose Elliston Park. This is one of the very few in-person programs we can do. It's a nice outdoor hike in the woods so everybody's able to space out evenly and hopefully it's not too chilly. Then on Thursday, February 18th, we have the Whaling Captains of Color with Skip Finley. And then on Thursday, February 25th, we have High Style in the Gilded Age Part 11. About Frances Breeze Miller with Mary Cummings. This is going to be the second to last in our High Style in the Gilded Age lecture series. So you want to make sure to join us for that one. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn everything over to Jackie and she will give you guys today's talk. And if you have any questions, please remember you can submit them in either the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll go through those at the end. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Connor. Good morning, everybody. I hope you are getting through with all the snow we had earlier. However, this topic is somewhat fluid. Every day things are changing, obviously, as we move towards more people getting vaccinated and, different communities responding differently. However, for the clothing industry, they have tried to respond to the current trends. So I love this image right here because despite the pandemic, fashion continues. So we talk about a period in a culture as zeitgeist. It's a German term which was developed many years ago by a German sociologist who looked at the current culture as a way to forecast what we wear, how it represents us. So that's really what we're looking at today, how Americans have changed their dress habits, which they have. So one of the things that we try to look at are the very large trends that dictate current events. So one of the premier forecasting companies is called Fashion Snoops. I work with them at the college, and we use it in our forecasting courses and other topics. And here you see what they have just for 2021 now, because they go all the way out to 2024. These are the major macro trends that they have identified, and what they do when they work with their clients, they start with each of these and they funnel it down to the specific market. So we start with what we call distrust. That was the first macro trend they talk about. And then, what is fact and what is fiction? How do we assess what information we're receiving? The second one they identified is called betterment. And I think people are looking for optimum ways to feel better in terms of their health, especially I think the pandemic has accelerated this feeling. The third trend, or the third macro trend they talked about is a living lab, a better quality of life and cost. There's a lot of talk about smart cities, which is a large issue, which again comes down to everyday life as well. The next one is the human level, nature and creativity, that we are connecting more with spirituality. I think that's really important, especially in a digital age where we're so alienated in our homes and in our computers. The next one is called voyeuristic. Peering into private lives, they've noted that Americans on average spend at least 11 hours on either reading, watching, or listening in social media. So that is a lot of time in one day. The next one is green acres, this idea of ethical, this whole big issue about environmentalism, biotech advancements for improving global health and life. The next one is recalibrate. Stop and think of what we are fighting for. That's a big issue. Okay? Threshold. Artificial intelligence is on the horizon. By 2029, our computers will have human level intelligence. It's pretty kind of scary, but it is something that is out there that we have to think about. And then one-to-one, this is very, very true. There is a hyper personalization of product and marketing. More companies are customizing and making sure that they are listening to their consumer. And lastly, belonging. Shifts in lifestyle. People want to, we have disruptors in our lives, and we're trying to make our homes, our communities, and our identity important to us. So these are large issues, and you can see below me how they appear on the Fashion Snoops page. Each one of these, the client would click into and then go further with the trend, the macro trend. The other thing we talk about is color. Color is really important. It's one of the first things we forecast out before we get to fabric or before we get to silhouette or style or anything. So just looking at 2021, these are some of and they're very neutral, which kind of gives you a feeling of what's going on right now. And people are feeling very neutral. And so we're not going out on a limb in any dynamic colors. And right below that are some of the colors that women have identified as their top colors. And again, they're very muted, they're very dark, and kind of sophisticated at the same time. So I think those are really important. And then we look at the men's, which is very interesting. So it's a little deceptive because we go from the very darks to the very light, but these are combination color plans as well. There's one color that I pulled out after this, which is called Immune. It's on that original color chart that you just saw. And on this, it shows us a swatch of the color and how it is applied in this jackets right here. So when you see it in a product, it makes sense when you see a swatch or a color of it on a slide, so to speak. So what happened to us? We began to shift our clothing choices. We know a lot of people, the legging and sweatpants business has been very dynamic, up about 80%. And in April, normal clothing sales were down 79%. So it was a complete switcheroo in what we were wearing. A lot of elastic waistbands. Women wanted to go back to a natural, a natural shape, so to speak. So leggings and sweatpants were very much de rigueur for most homes. But of course, also because of Zoom and because a lot of us work from home, we see the top of people. So Zoom sweaters, as they call them, became very important. And so you look very professional on top, as we see these two people right here. And notice the gentleman on the left has his pajama bottoms on, which we know many people did. And we'll talk more about pajamas later on. So both men and women were focusing on their tops, so they look really well. Matter of fact, I'm sure you've seen some TV ads where you see a guy at his desk in a nice suit and tie jacket, and then he gets up to go somewhere else in his house, and of course he just has his underwear on, perhaps. Okay, so we know this is important. This is definitely a trend. People want to look. Matter of fact, the sales have reflected it too in retail establishments. So the sweaters are really important because of the Zoom business. We're seeing what we call a lot of sweaters, not only tops, but all-in-one sweaters. Very large sweaters, people are more concerned about being comfortable. They're not looking to highlight their body necessarily. It's important. The turtleneck is very important. So we see that oversized, elongated, classic, sweater dresses, turtlenecks are really very popular and very easy for everyone to wear. So we can encourage people to perhaps buy something new for their new life. The other thing that's happening too is that a lot of people are buying vintage or thrift clothing. I think many of you know that. Some of it is what we call folk inspired, as we see here. It's sort of a reaction against the Industrial Revolution. These are actual garments that have been bought or can be bought online. We know that one of the major thrift websites is Thrift Up. Maybe some of you use them. The global data for resale goods is projected to be $28 billion, and by 2024, $64 billion. This also includes, companies like The RealReal, Poshmark. Poshmark alone has over 31 million users globally. So this is a huge trend. And it's sort of a rebellion against normal manufacturing, clothing industry that we know about. They've also designed fitting rooms now, so people, when they buy online, virtually can see how things look on them. The other thing's happening, we're looking at a lot of cozy clothes. As I said earlier, elastic waistbands. We see the typical cozy outfit on the left, and the guy on the right is off to work. Also notice he's wearing sneakers. He has a shirt, rolled up sleeves with a little vest, and probably those are elastic waist pants. T-shirts are really important. It's all about comfort. That's the main focus of people's feelings today. It makes them feel better. Even in our shoes. Now the Crocs, some of you may own Crocs. Crocs have made a big comeback. Business is up about 15%. And also basic white sneakers. But here we see, this is an androgynous trend. Both men and women are wearing Crocs and buying them if they can get them. On the right, we see this sort of slingback Reebok, sort of a Croc look. Would we wear this out? I don't know. Is it stylish or is it slovenly, as we ask? So there is a move towards an androgynous look, particularly in clothing and in shoes, where men and women can both be wearing the same kind of looks. Another thing is of cocooning ourselves, wrapping ourselves in layers of clothing. You see here 4 pieces. It's an equation they call about starting with the bodysuit and then moving to the right. So each piece layers on top of the other in an assembly. And people find comfort in this idea of layering, and yet at the same time, it's quite attractive. So this idea of layering has, or cocooning, which is really a trend that was forecasted many years ago by some of the large forecasting companies, that people were looking to make themselves protected. And by layering ourselves in these clothing, we feel more protected, perhaps. Again, more cozy. This is, again, it's very androgynous, because when we look at all these pieces, they could be men and they could be women. It really doesn't matter, but they're all very comfortable clothes, things that make us feel, they're basic in a sense. And men too, not as we see in the previous slide, they could wear either any of those things, but these are some shots, and these happen to be some high-end pieces. So we're seeing that even the couture market is going towards more basic, comfortable, what we call cozy clothing, which is more acceptable at the time. And the other thing that's happening is at the couture level, at the high end, Gucci and others are collaborating with mainstream brands like North Face. So here we see an ad that they're running that Gucci and North Face are collaborating in co-branding, and it shows a consumer need, it really shows a trend that's happening now, because the couture market, although it's very much alive, the amount of dollars they do in clothing as opposed to accessories is so small that they're looking for new ways to, to survive in a sense. Cosmetics too are important. Now this is really interesting because here we see in these couple of these slides is what people are buying in cosmetics. And going from right to left, we can see most recently, this only goes through 2019, the top slide, the top chart, fragrances is number one, followed by color cosmetics. That would be foundation makeup that you put on your face, skincare, and then personal care. And then as we go back in time to 2005, it wasn't as important. Those things intensified as we moved into the pandemic. Right below it, we see it by generation. So we see that the Gen X, now there are, when we talk about marketing, we always talk about generational because we have to really identify important consumer groups. We don't generalize anymore because the consumer market has become so segmented. So the major ones here we're talking about are the baby boomers. Now the baby boomers, just so you know who they are, many of you probably know who they are, were born between the ages of 1946 and 1964. So a lot of them are, retired. So we see here that only 9% of the baby boomers browse and buy online. Then we go down to Gen X, which is actually smaller. Now, the Gen X were born between the years of 1965 and 1980, and only 16% of them browse and buy online. Going towards the millennials, now the millennials, we're moving closer to the future, were born in 1981 to 1996, and so it's up to 24%. And then we go to Gen Z, they were born in 1997 through the early 2010s, and that's only 20%. So it's interesting to see how shopping habits are dictated by age, which makes sense. And here we see sales year to date by category again. And it's no surprises what we see comes up on top. And we see how the growth has happened. This is through 2020. So we see how body wash and lotion and nail care and hair care and grooming and skincare move larger than things like lipstick and face makeup and eye makeup. Those are very low, although there is a little bit of a change here. So we see what's happening. We are definitely affected by the pandemic, and we're more concerned about our skin, our nails, our hair. And because we're on Zoom a lot, we want to look good, so we want to be well groomed. So it's interesting to see sales year to date in those categories. Makeup. So eye makeup is really important. We can see right here, this is dynamic. Eyeshadow, eye makeup, eyelashes up 204%. That is tremendous. False eyelashes. In March, they were up 15%. Lipstick was down 15% and prices down 28%. So we see that L'Oreal alone in these categories, their business is up 480%. And also Tweezman, which is obviously eyebrow business, etc., up 330%. So the focus, because of masks, we can see quite clearly what's going on here. People want their eyes to look good. People, when you communicate with people, you usually look straight at them. And so it's important that we feel we want to look attractive. And so this is what has happened. We also know that people are, because especially at the beginning of the pandemic, people were doing a lot of the things at home and still are. So there are all kinds of kits and directions now, like do your own nails, even to the extent of making your own clothes. Here's a little kit that someone can buy with a pattern, etc., and instructions how to do it. People were also cutting their own hair. So there were ads on the kinds of hair shears you can buy to cut your hair at home. And also, as we know, many of us were really worried that we couldn't have our hair colored. So there are a lot of new color at home products that are safe to use with instructions on how to use them. So because of that, we saw a huge increase in products such as this. The other thing we saw in accessories is masks. We went from just buying those just plain masks. Now we have to look good. So here we see it as a fashion accessory. Here we see the ones from Burberry. So the high end is certainly in on it. We're looking at it as a fashion accessory, one that coordinates and fits. People are now realizing that there are all different kinds of masks out there, and you want one that fits you properly, one that adjusts at least. We see them on the runway. Here are two very recent slides where we see how the fabric of the garment is used in the mask here, and similarly to the left. So the high-end goes mask as well. And then we know there are all kinds of assortments out there. You know, we have the sporty ones that we see here from Under Armour, Forever 21, and Nike. And then over here, we have some others from other brands showing everything from something more dressier, lacier, more feminine. So really, there is a mask for every person and every lifestyle, both men and women. So it's big business today, as we know, and some can be quite expensive. So what's happening for spring? So we see that there is some kind of a evolving new information. However, what we're seeing is very much not that new, again, very comfortable, you know, similarly very casual, not a lot of tailoring. So we see here that spring is coming back, still with comfort and ease, still very important. We see also in this spring, we're seeing a lot of cutouts. Two images here. The one on the left is a top that's designed with specific cutouts, sort of like a halter top. And we even see it in the shoe market in this sandal, which, if you can see, is cut out not only in the toe, but in on the top of the foot and as well as in the back. So cutouts are a new trend in not only clothing, but accessories. Okay, and again, spring we sort of designate as hopeful, comfort, feel good. So again, we see very not very revolutionary, but very comfortable. And notice how full the garments are. They're not close to the body too much, because again, it's familiar and it's comfortable and it makes you feel good. And it does give you that sense of hope. And even for men, we're seeing a lot of vibrant colors, and we're seeing several looks, from a very formal look over here where he's wearing an overcoat over, now these are more high-end, these images, but they still represent what men are attracted to. Here we see a very vibrant guy with lots of color and prints, and to the right, three-piece suit, again on the runway, very spring-like, very color-like. So men's spring looks very, very vibrant. So, you know, we talk about what's going to happen in our industry. So the Council of Fashion Designers Association set up a common thread pandemic relief for the industry, and to date have raised about $49 million to help supplement designers who are having trouble, you know, financially. But we have seen some new changes. We are seeing proposed later deliveries, meaning that new merchandise is going to be delivered closer to when we want to wear it. Delayed markdowns. So in other words, brands and manufacturers are trying to keep their retail prices fairly level until such time they need to reduce them. Because the earlier you mark down, the later you're able to, the more difficult it is to sell something at full price. And there'll be fewer collections. So we're seeing more of a consolidation. The industry is starting to address what kind of clothes will connect with customers. So here we go back to that macro trend when we talked about hyper customization, reaching out and finding out what customers really want. Clothes will symbolize a moment and give it shape. Now, the thing is, they talk about the end of fashion, but, we've been through a lot of traumas over the past years and many years. After great wars, after recessions, after pandemics, as we've had right here. So like in far back in time, we look at the bubonic plague in the 14th century, resulted in more body conscious dressing, plunging décolletage, and lavish adornment. Now, after World War II, 1947 exactly, Christian Dior announced his new look. 1947, right after the Second World War. As you know, during the war, there was no fabric, there was no supplies in the United States. Everything went to the war effort. And so his new look was sort of a symbol of regeneration in terms of full skirts, fashion details, and that became the boom that we saw in the 1950s. After the 1970s, we had an oil crisis. Some of you may remember the oil shock in 1973-74, where oil was scarce. We started, cutting back odd even license plate numbers when you went to the gas station. So after that, we saw a burst of color afterward. YSL, Yves Saint Laurent, designed his ballet costumes for the Belarus. So we want beautiful things. And right below here, we see an image. This also happened after World War II. This is a handbag that is still very much in demand today. It's the bamboo handle bag. It was created after World War II. Okay, it was designed by Alessandro Michele for Gucci, and it was a time of rebirth of beauty. And we know from watching Lady Di that she was photographed with hers in 1996. So in these vibrant colors, this bamboo handle was a sort of a representation of how beauty and fashion emerges after a very dark period of time. I mean, there are many examples. These are just some of them. So what happens after the pandemic? What else is possible? Is there going to be an office dress code? Will men's pajama bottoms be still important? Are we going to use a lot of scarves and shawls and sweats? Certainly, some companies might have some kind of dress codes in terms of how you appear on screen. I certainly think that may happen, but the jury is out yet as to what exactly companies will demand of their workers. Pajamas. So pajamas are really making a comeback. In the Wall Street Journal, we talk about people are looking for a different way to find comfort and fashion together. This is from the fashion director of Saks Fifth Avenue. They notice an uptick in their store's sleepwear sales. After the world hit a pause last March, people were home more, they wanted to look nice, and there were sort of trends now in buying a good-looking pair of pajamas rather than, just buying something or putting together something you had at home. So in this little short piece, it talks about how PJs can look more put together than, than what we normally would wear. And we'll see a couple of images right here. So to the left, we see a guy, at home in the evening with a nice pair of pajamas on, reading a book. And then we even have the pajama look outfits that people can wear out. And here we see this young woman in this 3-piece or 2-piece outfit shopping in the grocery store. And to the right, this piece right here is a Valentino, a very good looking. It's that pajama type top with the pajama bottom in a very sort of sophisticated little print. And so pajamas do have have made an impact on sales. I'm sure some of us have old ones at home that we're still wearing, but there are people that are still liking to have ones that look great in case they have to get on Zoom or something. And here's some other little coordinated pajama groups to the left. And again, it's men's, it's a men's grouping here. However, certainly it can be androgynous as well. Ensure you're well groomed. You know, you can put together the way you want to. And on the right as well is another for men and women, sleep sets as they're called. Even some of these little tops can be worn somewhere else, not necessarily as a sleep product. The other thing that's happened is we're reaching back in time because of the economic impact of the pandemic, and because we still want newness, it feels inappropriate to do that. So we recognize that fashion, timeless fashion, holds its value and can be reworn. So we have fewer garments. So here was an event that Gucci held at a recent Fendi event, showed collections from people brought and wore their collections from the past. And so we see here some of the Fendi items that were showcased from past collections, still good looking, still what we call value wardrobes, things that you hold on to because they have value and they're classic and they still look good. So there's been a little bit of a emphasis on trying to have fewer garments and valuing what we have. Now, also looking ahead a little bit, there's been a desire to look at forward-looking fashion, but again, not that revolutionary. We're seeing these separates sort of, and again, look, it's oversized, it's not fitted, it's comfortable. It's sort of androgynous as well. It's not particularly feminine or masculine. And again, here we're seeing a lot of bold printed tops, as we see for the younger customer, and over here, the bold horizontal stripe. So we know that there is some thought into looking ahead and hoping for some new looks. Now, a new idea that just come out is that we should go into our closets and do a fashion diet. And so this idea of capsule wardrobes, putting your closet on a diet to come up with perhaps maybe 10 outfits for 10 days. You don't need a lot of clothes. This is not a new concept because Donna Karan in the 80s came out with her line of 7 easy pieces. She said, all you need are these 7 pieces to look good and mix and match. And so I think this is something we've talked about, many of us, but some people feel they have to buy a whole outfit every time they go shopping, and it's not true. And I think this sort of, it kicks into that large trend that we talked about earlier, the macro trends about environmentalism, about simplifying our lives, about looking at life rather than the materialistic clothing choices we have in front of us. So this idea of a capsule account where you go through your closet and you try and put together different outfits. Most savvy women do this anyway. Because you can't buy, you want to look good and you may not be able to keep affording to expand your wardrobe, but this is a way you can look good every day by choosing to mix and match what you have already. So even the designers have a view of the post-pandemic. Zenga has on the left here, has very earth tones. We're not traveling yet, but Louis Vuitton has his version of future hope for travel. We see this very well-dressed young man with his attaché case ready to travel and his little airplane buttons. And then of course, on the right, Prada has sort of comically put together their outfit about comfort as we go into the future. So the designers are certainly looking ahead at future business. you know, hopefully that their business will survive. So the thing when we look ahead, I think the things that come out of what we've seen today and what we're thinking about is less is more. Consumers are buying less and the industry follows with fewer collections a year and more simplified trends. That's very evident. More customer innovative experiences. In other words, people want to feel that they're having an experience rather than just buying something. There's a huge digital intensity. This semester, I'm teaching a class on fashion digital marketing because that's the way our business is going. Our consumers are digitally intelligent, and whether it's on their mobiles or laptops or whatever, that's the way we're transmitting information in order to offer them products that they may or may not want. So this digital intensity is very crucial. The whole social media thing is exploding. And so the traditional advertising that we've been used to is no longer that important. And consumers, the other big thing that's really important, and we're seeing it in this reduction of clothing, wearing less, buying less. Consumers are concerned for low-income workers in the supply chain. Now, traditionally, in manufacturing, many of the clothes that we wear today that are moderately priced, the only way they get to be moderately priced is they're made offshore in other places globally, where people are not necessarily treated well nor paid enough for their work. So there's a big movement, and there has been for a while, about being more concerned about these workers, that they have good living conditions, healthy environments in which to work, and given a living wage. I think it's something we take for granted in the United States, but if you go to some of these third world nations where some of these products are made, we would be a little bit shocked. So it's important to think about, and I think when you go back to those macro trends, you see that ties into all of these things. So maybe you all would like to ask some questions about your thoughts on fashion in the pandemic, and I'll be happy to talk more about that with you.
All right, thank you, Jackie. So yeah, like she said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to submit them into either the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. Let's see, I'll look through what we have right now. We have somebody who's commented partway through saying not liking going out in pajamas.
Not liking the pajamas.
Yeah.
You mean this one here? Where is it?
I will say I definitely been the person at the grocery store in the pajamas very often during this pandemic. But let's see.
Yeah. Well, the Valentino one might be more acceptable on the right.
Yeah, there might be a little more couture than mine, just black.
That looks more, it looks more, something that you'd wear out rather than the other two.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a question. Let's see. Did you see Pantone predictions for 2021 of happy face yellow and a very dark gray? What do you think?
Well, Pantone is the most important color standard in the industry. And by that I mean they counsel not just clothing people, but even like when you go, like I always say to my students, like your notebook that you have in front of you, why do you think the colors are on the face of those notebooks the color they are? It's because they went to Pantone and they looked at the color standards and what was being predicted. I think that, I think it's the two extremes of what's happening in the world today. The yellow certainly is the hope for a better future, and then the darker are sort of the somber undertones of what we're living through. So I think Pantone does predict what they feel is happening, but also on their website, which you can go to for free, you will see all the complementary colors that they advise go with those, and you might see more, variation in those colors. So I think it's not too far off.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what Pantone picks as like the color of the year.
Right.
Things
We all
like
look
that.
for it,
Always
right?
like very confused by it. And then I read their sort of dissertation about why, and I'm like, oh, yeah, they've put a little bit
Yeah,
of
then it
thought.
makes sense. I
Yeah,
mean, a couple of years ago, they did a combination color. They did blue, pale blue and pale pink for the gender differences. And so they made it like like they merged the two colors together. It was very interesting.
let's see. I don't see any more questions coming in from today, but that is what happens when you do such a good job explaining everything.
Well, I hope so. I think it's, you know, I think every day things are changing, and as the economy starts to open up a little bit more, we're going to see a little more changes. But I still think that, you know, the online business is still dominant. And, you know, although people still like to go into a store, I think a lot of people don't feel do it. And so we're going to still see a lot of online business.
Let's see. We just had a question come in
Sure.
asking you with Zoom, how about eyewear?
You mean glasses?
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on, you know, certainly sunglasses. People always want to wear sunglasses because of, you know, the ultraviolet rays, whether it's winter or summer. I think the focus really is the makeup side of it rather than the spectacle side of it. Although, you know, eyeglasses are still very trendy. You know, a lot of people who don't need them for every day but need them to read will buy fashion ones, things to match their outfits. I haven't seen a lot of huge direction in eyeglasses, but it doesn't mean that people aren't concerned about, again, you're able to buy a lot of your glasses online now. You know, the average walk into a store and pick a pair of glasses is not as popular as it used to be. So people are finding less expensive ways to buy their eyeglasses as well.
I mean, I will say, as somebody who has eyeglasses that I wear all the time, these ones I have the blue light filter on, which I've noticed.
Yeah, the blue light, right?
Yeah, which I notice sometimes will actually cause a bit of a glare or reflection when on these Zoom calls with the computer screen. So that's something interesting.
Yeah.
I think some
A
people.
lot of the yeah, a lot of the people like J. Crew are selling them on their website. You know, the more trendier, more up to date. You know, they're trying to catch some of that business that might go to a particular, you know, optical site, so to speak.
Well, all right. So I see, unless anybody has any last second questions to submit right now, I think that was everything. I'd like to thank everybody that joined us today. We had the same starting number that we had right at the end, so that all looks great. Everybody stayed the whole time, and
That's good.
we got Jackie here doing another great talk. I want to thank you again, and we'll hopefully see you again in a few months.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to thank you, Connor, for your help today. As usual, very professional. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I try.
And thank you for everyone for logging in. Too bad you can't be in my class. This starts March 5th, but we're going to be doing fashion and digital marketing, but it should be fun.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next time. Have a good day.
Thank
everybody.
you, Connor. Bye-bye, everybody.